Gee, man, thanks, dude. I had it set up differently on the last stream, so when I switched scenes, it would automatically unmute. Didn't work so well today. Thanks, man. Basically, all I was talking about is that we're doing a live build today using 12700K. Specs are on the screen. This is for a client that has been using this chassis for the last 5 years or so. It's just every time a new system comes out, we just use the updated specs. Sweet. And then the walls are new, so I had to change the audio settings a little bit. Hopefully my mic is okay. Let me get some gloves on. So the reason for the gloves is really just to keep my fingerprints off of the customer's parts. Doesn't really do much for static. What I'm gonna do, the build order I'm gonna do is we'll do the fans onto the radiator. I usually do a pull configuration, and then we'll do the motherboard and everything on there, and then we'll do the chassis. We'll get it prepped. I usually strip down the chassis to anything that comes off of it, and then I build, and then I put everything back on. Then I'll use the anti-static strap when it's on the motherboard, and anytime I'm touching that, for the time being, not necessary. This will actually be my first time using the Phanteks Glacier 1 T30. Let's see, am I in? Here we go. Oh, this is way off too. I must have bumped it. There we go. So this is the cooler we're using. What's pretty cool about it is Phanteks uses a 38mm radiator. Yep, 38mm thick radiator. These were more common maybe 6 years ago on the earlier Asetek units, and then they kind of disappeared. It's nice to see them use that, but the star of the show is the fans. Their T30 fans are amazing. These things are just, their claim to fame is that they're 30mm thick rather than the standard 25mm, which I don't have a fan lying around, but that, and on top of that, they can go up to 3000 RPM if you choose to deal with the sound. They have a three options on the back that you select with the switch. Hybrid, it's like 1200 RPM. Then you got performance, I think caps that at 2000. Yep, 2000, and then advanced will go all the way to 3000. But man, these things, the sound profile they make, it's really good. At 2000 RPM, they're not annoying, they're not loud. At 1250, they're dang near silent. It's even when they're mounted onto a radiator at 1200 RPM, it's just great. It's awesome. So I'm excited to actually use this kit itself right here. It'd be nice if they did a 360mm kit, but you know, when we test this one out, it'll be interesting to see how it does. I think it's gonna be awesome. And then this is another thing I kind of like about the Phanteks kit. While this is RGB, it doesn't require to be mounted, so this will go in as an accessory on the side, because it is a workstation. It's not all about, you know, the lights and everything. So the brackets I'll need for the motherboard, I'll put those aside. What else is in here? So it looks like some cables. These fans can be daisy changed. Oh, here's the 1700 bracket. These fans can be daisy chained, so these are the cables for that, it looks like. So let's get organized. Right, stuff we don't need going back in the box. So just to show the comparison, I have a standard thickness Asetek radiator. We'll put them side by side. So this is typically what I use in my workstations. It's the 360mm Fractal S36. They're all Asetek base, so this is the Gen 4 pump, I believe, and I believe this is the Gen 7. on the Phanteks. But the cool thing is there's a PWM hub up here, makes for easy cable management. One wire basically goes to the motherboard and it'll control everything. But here you can see this is a standard, I think this is 30 or 28 millimeters or so. And then we'll put this next to the Phanteks one. You could see there's a thickness difference. And then on the bench, maybe you could see a little better, but once you put the fan on top, there's definitely a difference. It doesn't show up too good on my cameras here, but it's alright. Put this aside. So I typically do these in a pool configuration. So normally I got this all sorted out because my builds are pretty standardized. This will be my first time using this setup. And with the Phanteks Evolv, I think what I'm going to do, we'll see if I regret this decision. I think the ideal way will be for the fan cable to come out the top. So I'm gonna route it that way. And by regret, I'm not sure if I should go down through the bottom or the top. That'll be easy to change later. Find some hardware. So some brackets we don't need. So most of the stuff in that bag I didn't need. I just need the thumb screws. So this would be the old Intel backplate. Don't need that. Don't need the AMD one. I have so many of those. So many of those already. Alright, here would be the screws I need. So while it came with its own thermal paste, I won't be using that. Oh, let's see. What's pretty interesting, I didn't realize this, they come with enough hardware to do a push-pull configuration. Yeah, there's 16 long screws, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, they're actually they're different lengths, so maybe if you're doing a push-pull with standard fans mixed with the T30s, maybe it's just the kit that Asetek provides for them, and I don't know, it's kind of weird. Interesting. Just trying to make sure I use the right ones. I'm pretty sure the short ones, oh yeah, so even the short ones fit. What happens is if you have the standard Asetek hardware, it won't fit these fans because the fans are 5 millimeters longer. So whenever you buy these fans separately, they come with their own hardware should you mount it to a radiator. I think maybe the extra long screws are possibly if you're doing this in a push configuration and let's say the sheet metal from the chassis is a little on the thick side. It looks like they include the extra long ones just in case. I've tried these in push and pull on an EK radiator, and they seem to not really care whether they're in push or pull. So I like to do pull configuration for serviceability, and it will also allow us to keep the access to those switches. The motherboard will control the fan speed, but if the client for whatever reason wants to kick it down to 1250 RPM or 3000 RPM, they could change that, but I'll ship this in the performance mode, which is 2000 RPM. Well, that's kind of cool. That's interesting about the hardware. So earlier I mentioned it'd be pretty cool to see this as a 360mm kit. I don't think Asetek offers a thick 360mm radiator, but that would be super cool to see with these fans on it. Just gonna make sure the threads are a little on the tight side. Just want to make sure none of them are cross thread before I zap them down. So the one thing I paused and looked at it for a second was that I thought about removing the little rubber pads there. You can kind of see them on this side, but these fans perform so good. I'm not really too worried about the little air gap I see there. And you know, it could potentially transfer harmonics and make weird sounds. These fans are so smooth, I'm not really worried about it, but it's the way Phanteks ships them, so I'll roll with it. This was the part I was kind of curious how it would go, because as you can see, I like to cable manage. I don't know what camera will pick it up better, but I like to do my cable managing along the side of the fans there. So I can't do that with the Phanteks fan. And the daisy chain harness is like a little too long to, oh, actually there we go. Because I mean, I was kind of wondering how would I orient it, but it looks like this would be really good right here. And then I think I could wrap a zip tie around the actual screw holding it to the radiator. So really, these will hold themselves in place if I just secure it here, they'll hold themselves in place. So I'll do one zip tie here and one here. See if I could bring this in a little bit. Hey Brian, what's up, man? Oh, that makes sense. Alright, that's cool. I've seen the Halos, they look really nice actually. I've never used them though. I rarely do RGB builds. But when I do, I really spend a lot of time on the cable management. Thanks for stopping by, man. And I appreciate the information earlier about the fans and everything. So I think this will be pretty cool. And I love how it's basically a module now. So if this pump fails, I mean, I could literally ship a client something just like this to replace it. But you're not juggling it in a push configuration. You're juggling the fans and aligning the radiator and everything. If the client ever had to do anything, it's just super easy. Just the screws in the front and you're done. But hopefully they never have an issue to begin with. So we're good to go here. I'm gonna move on to the motherboard now. Set this aside. Alright, let's clean up a little bit. So we'll do the motherboard and then we'll get to the case. One kind of thing I did differently with 12th gen Intel that I haven't really done before ever, unless it was an extremely tight budget build, using the non-Z series boards. I nearly, even if I wasn't overclocking, I'd use the Z series boards. But I feel like B660 was so good that for the first time I didn't need to use a Z board to get all the features I needed. You get the RAM overclocking, you get enough M.2s, really, you know, you get Wi-Fi, you get nice features on boards that save clients, you know, sometimes $200. And, you know, it's an i7, the board could definitely deliver enough, we're not overclocking. I kind of like that it cannot overclock because they're, you know, workstations in an office environment. You know, just in case you come across maybe an enthusiast employee that tries to overclock their own system, it's not even possible anymore. So that's another bonus to the B series. And oddly, Asus making their ProArt B660, that's really one of my favorite boards to use for ATX. Unless we had a reason to go with the Z board, I just didn't. I'm gonna toss that, and we'll just use this box for the loose accessories as we go along. Actually, no. Stick to what we normally do. All right. Oh, there's the board. I mean, as it is, it's a good looking board for a B series. And then we'll just check for anything I need to peel off. Chipset had a film on it. The rear I/O has a film. one of my clients, it was a delit client. So I used to do a lot of deliting. I offered as a service. And if you don't know what that is, that's when you basically take the metal part off an Intel CPU and replace whatever's under there with some liquid metal thermal compound. So this client of mine loved my work, but he told me my battery is upside down on one of my workstations, and he meant the BIOS battery. I don't know if that'll come up, but ever since he mentioned that to me, I always find myself aligning the text on the battery perfectly. Which, it's so funny because I thought I had everything covered with my builds. I'm really prideful of my cable management. And he called me out on the battery, and I'm like, dang, you're right. Now I can't unsee it. So here we go. We're gonna take off the M.2 heatsink. I don't use these motherboard heatsinks. I think they are a bit of a gimmick. Because there's no fins, so ultimately they're just gonna retain heat. And being so close to the video card, they're just gonna kind of absorb heat and get heat soaked, and you know, that's all they really kind of do. That they might help offer some protection against like spikes, but that's about it. So this has the new Asus toolless standoffs, so we don't need any screws to secure the M.2s. I'm gonna throw this crucial P2 in there. Still getting used to this new setup. One thing to watch out for when you build a system is, especially on like ATX boards, these lower M.2s, I haven't checked, but for example, this M.2 is probably being routed through the chipset. So it won't perform as good potentially as the top one. So when you have a bunch of M.2s, just realize they're not all the same. Sometimes they might be rated the same speed, but they'll go through the chipset and you might lose some SATA connectivity. So we're gonna start without a heatsink on this. I recently literally just shipped a 3090 Ti build. On the 3090 Ti, it was an EVGA for the Win 3, so it has a passive mode where none of the fans spin. Because of that, this whole area in the build was getting heat soaked, and the drives would throttle during heavy benchmarks. So that made me reevaluate everything. I only had the issue with that 3090 Ti. I stress test, I benchmark everything I build. That 3090 Ti, even though that case had 6 fans, 4 were set as intake and 2 as exhaust, it still throttled. So I got some Be Quiet M.2 heatsinks, solved the problem. I also set all the fans except for 1 to be intake, which also helped. But so it shipped with no thermal issues, but it had me finally realize, okay, I need to start paying attention to temperatures, since next gen video cards are just gonna get hotter. So I'm gonna test this Crucial without the heatsink, and then later on I have a heatsink I'm gonna put on there and try out, just to get some before and after numbers to see if even a value drive like this will benefit. That happened to be one of the later Phison, 7,000 megabytes per second drives that was having an issue. And when it throttled back to like 1.8 gigs per second. So it was still fast, but you're not getting the performance you paid for, and that's not good for the drive's longevity either. So at this point, we'll do the CPU. If you guys will excuse me, that's actually my dog. Hold on a sec. Yeah, so my dog has its own bell to get in and out of the house. That's what that was. Alright. So anyone new to building, these CPUs only go in one way. There's markings on the motherboard and the CPU to show you which way to do it. Just checking for any dust or anything weird. And this socket, alright. It's only my second time using this motherboard. So I like to push down gently on the CPU as I lower the clamp. And if you were using a contact frame, this is where you would actually change it. Before clamping down, at this point I would undo the screws, throw on the bracket, which would be one of these. So the concept with these is that the CPU is bendless, that it keeps it nice and flat in the socket. I'm still personally testing this on my test bench before I jump out and do it on every i7 i9 build. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm gonna just push down gently and then lower it. But I definitely have seen these bending under the clamping pressure. I think some coolers are worse than others because the actual coolers will flatten it out some. And the ones that don't, I think that's when you get these really big temperature differences on some of the cores. Right, so we'll do the actual bracket now for the cooler. Bracket can basically go on any way, this backside one, but I always like to have it so the text is legible. I almost feel like I'm talking too much, so I can't hear the music, but I figure I should probably explain what I'm doing. Basically just do this by hand. And once it's all the way down, then I'll just give it a nice twist. Okay, so we're gonna do RAM next. 64 gigabytes of RAM. 2 32 gigabyte sticks, and that's so that for whatever reason, if they need to upgrade, they can just pop in 2 more. This also only goes in one way. Tight fitting socket though. I like to support the backside of the motherboard as I clamp it down. You'll hear that click. Alright, so now we're basically ready to start working on the actual chassis. Alright. Put this aside. Alright, there he is. So at this point, we're gonna strip it down, take all the panels that come off, we're gonna take those off, and there's a few things I do to this to kind of increase airflow, which we'll do along the way too. These came off really easy. Sometimes they're kind of snug and you gotta work with them to get them off. Here's an example of one that's being tough. So in order to not scratch it at all, I'm going to remove the top panel at this point since it's kind of fighting us. So one thing I'll end up doing, I'm going to remove the screens in here to basically unshroud these vents. One thing that sometimes helps too, when they're tight like this, is I'll crack these screws loose. That way there's more room for it to play, and ultimately if it just doesn't want to come off, I'll just take them off altogether. And let me go get the dog real quick, I'll be right back. So I'm just gonna loosen these up a little bit, about half a turn. There we go, it's coming off. Ooh, there it is. Alright, now the front panel. What I do to the front panel, basically, let's see what camera, we'll do the side camera. We'll unscrew the screws that hold these studs in place and put a 1mm washer underneath them. That'll ultimately have the front panel sitting further out, you know, by 1mm, but it kind of makes it flush with the side panels, and it just helps unshroud some of the air filter. Just, you know, just trying to get more airflow to it. We'll do that later though. the other fan out. One thing I might try with this chassis, typically I'll do the 2 front fans and 1 as exhaust, but on this time around I might try just I might try 2 intakes on top. Not sure yet. We'll see how it goes. I don't use the Velcro straps. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna use them on this build either. I'm gonna save them in case I change my mind though. I'll leave the top ones in place just for now. There's the only thing I don't like about this chassis is that there's a lot of cables I end up rerouting a little bit. So right now I'm just kind of untangling things, seeing which ones I'm going to use and which ones I'm going to tuck up here. Let's put that back. So this isn't one of my normal builds, so the last build I did in one of these was probably like 6 months ago. So it's not like it's muscle memory or anything, this is all on the fly. We have our power switch, our hard drive LEDs. Right. So we'll connect SATA power because that's how you switch the color button. The color of the button, the power button that's up here. Everything else will stay up here, I think. So let's route that nicely. I cut the original zip tie that was up here. Put a new one. So we'll just need to make sure later that this all clears the top panel. I might need to reroute some of that, but once I know it clears, then I'll add another zip tie up over here to secure everything. Nearly every build I do get shipped, so really don't want anything moving around while it's getting shipped. Alright, outside of that, we're basically good to drop in the motherboard. Let's get the hardware out. Okay, so I'll just take the PCIe covers off. Yeah, so we'll take 2 off. Alright, I'm just gonna probably mute while I blow the case off. So the reason I do that is some cases actually have a lot of metal shavings after you go, you know, removing stuff. Alright, everything looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the screws for the motherboard, but I'm not going to tighten them down all the way until they're all installed. What that does is that will help you align the motherboard in case you need to. But if you start tightening them, by the time you get to the last screw hole or whatever, the motherboard might be just slanted enough, or you know, the screw doesn't go in properly and you could cross thread it. So you leave everything loose in case you need to wiggle the motherboard around or something. You have that movement to align everything properly. And then I just set this to the number 2 setting on the Milwaukee, and I slowly drive it in. You don't want to, when using power tools, you do want to start your screws by hand. But even though I have it set to number 2, that's not going to fully protect you. You want to go in nice and slow. If you like just go full throttle and zap it in, the tightness will be different than if you just go slow and steady. Alright, I'm just gonna randomly check a couple, make sure the torque feels good. Alright, so at this point I'm gonna start cable managing the chassis cables before I move on to adding more to it. So that means the audio cable, I'm gonna do that next. Do the USB 3.0 cable. We'll do the on-off switch cable, stuff like that. Right. I remember now. the length on this audio cable doesn't let me route it the way I normally do. So I think this chassis, so let's get this in frame. This chassis, I think I go down this way. But I like our straight lines. I try to avoid zigzag, you know, diagonal. So horizontal and vertical is like really what I prefer. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. We're gonna be careful plugging this in. The thing you could damage with the audio cable is not really the connector on the motherboard, it's the actual small wires on the actual harness. So you want to be careful when you push those in. You don't want to smash the actual wires. You want to have your grip on the actual connector itself rather than the wires. So the concept with this will be to route it this way, and now I'm gonna do the on-off, the power switch, and then the hard drive lights. Half the time I honestly don't even connect it because it's almost irrelevant today. It's not like back in the day with spinning drives where things were so slow you were wondering if they were working. But since it has it, we'll plug it in. And this will follow the same path as the audio cable. That'll get routed, you know, if I could find it, that'll get routed the same way. The SATA, I'm going to try to tuck along this side over here where the hard drive cages are. At this point, I think we will remove those Velcro straps. So I'm going to leave that loose for now, and let's figure out where we're going to do the 3.0 connector, the USB 3.0. On this board, it's right up here, right below the 24 pin, so let's see what's the cleanest way to get it there. This will be the winner. Plugging that connector in is my the connector I fear the most. You're doing that more than a CPU. Doesn't matter if it's like a $4,000 Threadripper or whatnot. The USB 3.0 header is the one I fear the most. Right, so then SATA will hide back there with this 3.0 connector. Alright, let's add some more zip ties. Feeling committed to this routing at this point. We'll leave them loose though. Okay. Now, you know, I might do the SATA going down this way too. We'll see. For now, I'm gonna put it with the other wires. Alright, so at this point, we'll plug in the on-off switch. I still work well enough for that. I need a new glove here soon. So since the hard drive and the on-off switch is extra long, we're gonna push it back up to this top area to hide the excess amount. And then let's get the hard drive one up there too. So I already know I'm probably gonna have to cut this again because the EPS wires might route this way as well. We'll see what I do with those. Ultimately, USB 3.0 will get zip tied back here. There's some little clips I could use. So I'm gonna unbox the power supply, and then we'll start doing the 24 pin, the EPS 8+4. After that, then we'll move on to the cooler, get that routed up, and then we'll do the video card. Probably should let my hand dry off a little more. Don't need the power supply just yet. We'll put that away. I have a sip of coffee. That is straight espresso. Alright, these will be SATA. Alright, here's our 24 pin. Let's see. There's one of the CPU ones. That's the EPS. And there's the other one. Put the rest aside. This is my favorite part of the build, is the actual cable management. So first things first, I'll straighten out the cable a little bit. So now we're good there. Let's just do all of them in one shot. I know I mentioned the last stream, but I'll say it again. I used to hate these ribbon style cables, but now I love them. Well, I won't say love them, but I've learned to like them. So what we'll do, as usual, I'll pre-bend the 24 pin. So it's kind of has like a radius already built into it. Then I'll feed it from the back side here. Plug that in. Stubborn, there we go. Finally clicked. Alright, and then we'll feed the PS ones. This is why I like having everything so open. I haven't put the all-in-one cooler in yet because I have room to work basically inside the chassis. If the video card and the cooler was already installed, I mean it's not much different, but it helps. Just have more room. You know, there's no video card in my way here. The hoses from the all-in-one cooler are out of my way. So since it's an 8+4, I'm going to just bend half of one of them, kind of make it look like a T almost. And then I'll plug it in. And we'll get the other one. Again, I pre-bend things in the shape I want them. So everything fits nice. Make sure everything clipped in. Now I will remove the slack. So everything on this side where the motherboard is, that compartment, it's all nice and tidy. The mess is just on the back side. So these cables are nice and long, so I could potentially route them wherever I want. But due to like the actual areas that zip tie things down, this side along the back of the motherboard doesn't have anywhere to tie them down, so we're gonna go this way and back down, and we'll still have plenty of length. That'll be the only thing on that that's getting zip tied up here. So I'll tighten that down. And again, I also bend my zip ties to the shape I need. So it's easier to feed them through things. I use gray zip ties. Well, I like that they're color neutral, but so that if anyone has to work on this system, they'll see where the zip ties are. It's just easier to work with. You're not trying to pull on something realizing it's actually zip tied because you didn't see the zip tie. So now it's gonna join the other cables. And then with the ribbon cables, the trick to cable managing them nicely is you want to keep them together, keep them bundled together, and then you got to kind of fold them over, like really, you bend and then you kind of twist, so they'll kind of do what you want. So I'm gonna leave the zip tie up here in place. I'll cut it later, For the time being, I'm just gonna use the zip tie in one of the areas. And the reason for that is that I'm not quite sure what else is gonna go there. So you can kind of see the cable management coming together. Everything's gonna run down straight here. That's like kind of like the main highway for all the cables. So I left this zip tie down here loose enough to just feed them through there. Alright, now let's see what we do with the 24 pin. I think the 24 pin. I'll probably do something like this with the 24 pin. I've never had issues closing the side panel, but that's one thing you gotta be careful for, because this is just held in with magnets. It's hinged here, but it's just a magnet that holds it in place. So you want to make sure, things are nice and tight. Yep, I think that'll do it. So that zip tie we just put on, we're gonna cut. Bending the zip tie. You want everything organized before you put the zip tie down. And you'll see the theme is all of the zip tie, the locking mechanisms are going to be pointing the same direction. So these are at an angle because of the way, just the zip tie anchor is. But, the ones that I could actually clamp in this orientation, the locking mechanism will point towards the front. So I'll cut this one again. That one I'm probably gonna leave loose because I may have the video card cables going through to that one too. And then we'll cut the top one and have everything joined up there. Actually, I'll reuse this zip tie. Alright, so now what we'll do, we'll go back and focus on, I'm going to say the all-in-one cooler will be next. I may end up putting the Velcro back in place just for the actual USB 3.0 wire. But ultimately everything's going to look nice and tidy. It'll be something like that. This is the part I'm excited about because it's something different than the fractal one I use. You get really used to that hub. So I'm gonna place it in to see how the wiring for the fans are gonna look, and then I'll remove it probably so that I could do the thermal paste and everything. Actually, what we'll do is we'll just clean the thermal paste right now. We'll use Kingpin KPX. right away what I noticed with this gen pump, where the holes are, the machining's smooth and it's not tearing up my anti-lint paper towel. So I kind of dig that. So with the Asetek generation that's on the fractal ones, the machining is more rough. So when you're like, you know, trying to clean the surface, pieces of your paper towel or whatever you're using will kind of tear off where the screw holes are. So definitely dig that. And we're gonna get some more coffee. So let's see how this thing fits. It looks so beefy. Like, Phanteks, if you're still there, please make this in 360. So, I'm glad we went with the harness on top after. That is that's the ideal spot to do it, I think, for this chassis. When I do Sliger builds, like their SFF chassis, I usually go the other way. And then, let's see, where will we mount it? So here's another thing I like to do. I try to use gravity in my favor. So, and I doubt the camera is gonna probably pick this up. Let me get it nice and close. So, there's a lot of play here for where I can mount it in a few locations, really high, really low. And if you look at this screw hole right here, if I tighten it right here, the gravity of the radiator will help hold it in place because of the way the chassis is stamped. That'll be a nice natural spot to mount the radiator rather than mounting it higher for no other reason. That way you're just using gravity to your benefit. Let's illustrate that. We'll get these started. I like the hardware Phanteks is using too. The head of the screw is large enough where I almost, I don't feel I need to use the actual washers at all. See, now it's captured, like it's secured in this spot right here. It's not going all the way down. All the holes are exposed, so it's not like we're hiding or preventing anything else from being screwed in. And because I can access the harness, I think I'll just go ahead and mount the radiator right now. Thinking out loud is kind of funny. Trying to illustrate what's going on in my brain. It sounds a lot better in my brain than out my mouth sometimes. Alright, there we go. So now, what will we do about the pump? Let's see it better this way. I still need to switch it to the LGA 17 bracket, but I think this might work out okay. We'll do it this way. Okay, let me put some thermal paste on there first before I remove that. So I'm essentially going to prime my thermal paste. I'm going to put a small amount onto this little towel, just to make sure there's nothing that's dry that's going to go on the CPU itself. And the Kingpin KPX doesn't come with that syringe, it's just something I purchased. Put those on all, whether it's Noctua or KPX I'm using, I put that on. And then let's mount this up. There's my bracket. I'm just holding the pump in place while I get some of the thumb screws started. Gonna get it in there nice and centered looking, and then we'll just tighten things down in an X pattern. This is why I use the super long one. Good. There she is. So we'll figure out what we do about the cable. Just trying different positions right now for the harness. See where I want to route it to pick up some of the slack. This will work. Looks sloppy though. This one. Yep. I'll show you guys what I'm doing right now. So, I need a pointing tool. So I just went down this way, under the all-in-one bracket and back up, and then straight into the CPU fan header. That will do it. Actually, let's see. I want it in a different header. Yeah, that's really the only one in the area anyways. So I'll let the CPU channel control the pump, and then I'll do the fans off of a chassis header. Oh, this is actually pretty funny. I'm so close to just actually I am going to remove the all-in-one cooler. Oh, thanks Brian for the heads up. Well, that's a great explanation. Yeah, the 360mm testing I've done it on was with an EK radiator, so that might, that might be why things worked better. I guess with the aluminum radiators from all-in-one coolers, it's not a big improvement. That's good to know. So I'm going to remove the radiator, and it's hard to show on camera, but at the very top right corner there's a fan header. I'm gonna cut the zip tie I put for the harness up there, and that will allow me to just literally go straight from the fan to that header without having to use any extensions at all. But it's right at that corner. Pretty sure this cam is not gonna pick that up. These fans share something I liked about the Noctua A12s, and that is, well, the Chromax series in general, is the modularity of the harness, because you could, you could piggyback these, which you can't do necessarily with the Noctuas, but I love that the harness is just really short and you just plug in the cable length you want. Because now you could just shop on Amazon for extensions and get the cable length you need if you know what you need for your build. These fans are well worth their price and performance, but convenience as well. So here we're going to be careful because now it's the last two. The very last one. I'm going to keep my hand on it. On the radiator that is. So this zip tie will cut. That might actually be a parts delivery. How can I put you? Alright, there we go. I'll be right back. It actually was parts, it just wasn't the... I'm actually waiting for a Focus 2 chassis to come in, and I thought it might have been that. It was just some other parts. So let's get back to it. We're going to cut the zip tie here, and that will allow me to have more length. So now I'll just be able to go over and plug right into the motherboard. Let's make sure we spin this just like we had it, so it goes in the right way. I'm gonna hold this in place and make sure, yep, got enough length. And of course all my screwdrivers on the other side. Well, almost went on the wrong side. I'm just starting these, meaning they're really loose, so I could still move things around. Make sure all the screws get in without getting cross thread. There's my other screw. I was like, wait a minute, I'm missing one. I have my own spares, but still. Right. I'll let gravity do its thing, and then now I'll tighten. Is it good? Just check a couple of them. So now the fans can go directly into the motherboard. That is super cool. This is going to be a lot easier than I thought. And then I'll install these later, but this cooler comes with some hose management. Actually, we'll just do it right now. Let's do it now. It's around here somewhere. The accessories box, I believe. Here we go. Here we go. So these are basically hose management. Oh, I haven't read the manual, but I presume the center hole is for routing fan cables. If not, it's an accidental surprise. Like, where are those cables? So these would be RGB cables, and here are the other cables. So if the fan harness was too short, I was expecting we'd have to use the extension, and so that would have plugged into the fan, and then the other end would have plugged into the motherboard. It just worked out that this fan was close enough to the motherboard. We didn't need this, but I don't know if this is intentional or not, but I'm wondering if the fan harness will... Yeah, look at that. So while this doesn't have a hub on the radiator like the fractal one. You could still get the cables route, you know, the cable for the fan can follow the hose and end up in about the same spot where your CPU header, fan headers would be. So that is super cool. Keep that in mind for future builds. This one, it just happened to work out nicely that I didn't need it. What I do on the the fractal builds with the S36 is on a fractal chassis, I'll use the Velcro that comes with the chassis and I'll put that on the hoses. But I don't always use a fractal case, so it's nice that the Phanteks cooler came with its own way of managing the hose. So let's see. At this point, we're basically good to do the video card. Let me make sure. Yeah, we're gonna do the video card next. It's a Zotac 3060 Ti. This build is gonna be used for architecture work, or actually no, they're mechanical engineers. So basically the 3060 Ti is more than enough for them. You know, some of my clients, they might do visualization software like Lumion or Enscape, where they could have their architectural drawings imported into that program, and that program basically turns it into a video game. It's actually, I believe it's based off Unreal off the top of my head. So it's a game engine, and clients can see their home before it's ever built, or the actual designers, you know, when they're deciding where to put a window, that software, you could simulate the sun pattern, and you could see, oh, you know what, we're gonna get a weird glare, or whatnot. It uses uses ray tracing to determine the light path. And if you want a demo, I know Enscape has demo files where you could just download the demo, and it's a drawing of, it's an actual home you could walk through, and then you could do the timeline to see, you know, dusk, dawn, morning, whatever. It's super cool. I used to use it as a benchmark using Fraps, but it's not the most consistent. It's mostly, I just kind of use it today as just a quick test to make sure there's no weird things going on. But otherwise, they are not doing that, but with even the 3060 Ti can handle that software well. It's just the more you pay, the better rendering times you get, is basically what it is. Unless your drawings are so big and you need the VRAM, that's the other thing. So now we're gonna do the video card. A lot of my clients have never heard of Zotac, and you know, I actually like Zotac. I've never had an issue with the Zotac video card. It's just unfortunate, outside of this mini series, their video cards have gotten so long that they're not always easy to work with when you're doing a front-mounted radiator. And that's, you know, one of the biggest reasons why I don't end up using them as often as I do with EVGA or whatnot. It's funny because a lot of people in just, you know, the professional world are so conditioned to buying literal Xeons and whatnot, you know, workstations from Dell and HP and such, and they're quite underserved in the workstation environment because Autodesk applications are often lightly threaded. You know, they need high core speeds rather than high core counts, and a lot of firms end up going to either Dell Alienware or maybe sometimes their XPS series. So using the i7s and i9s, basically anyone watching the stream might think I'm building a gaming system, but really the lines have been blurred so much that it's essentially a great gaming system is going to make a great workstation. And what these workstation buyers need to be mindful of is not just the parts list, but it's the amount of time that is spent stress testing and finding the balancing act of speed versus reliability. You know, for example, this build does 3200 megahertz DDR4. The move for DDR4 is intentional because of the latency advantage, but you know, I could go 3600. It's just the benefits in, you know, AEC software. That's it's just not worth the increase in stability, potential stability issues. Although 3600 is pretty much guaranteed to run nowadays. The other thing too is I do a lot of 128 gigabyte kits. Like 32 is the minimum. I do a lot of 64 and I do quite a bit of 128. So I want to kind of standardize where 32 to 3600 is. 3600 I don't mind doing on 64 gigabytes of RAM and stuff, but 128 I try to stick to 32 for sure. But it's more just like a marketing bullet point. Client will never notice they have 3600 megahertz versus 32 in their workstation. What they will notice is they'll notice a CPU upgrade, a capacity upgrade if they don't have enough RAM. You know, if there's just better ways to spend the money. I'd rather spend a couple bucks on better fans than 3600 megahertz. So that's a quality upgrade that, you know, if their system's quieter, they'll be more productive, less fatigue. I think a lot of businesses in general, not just architecture, I mean businesses, do not place enough emphasis on peripherals, you know, monitors, keyboards, mice, the workstation. A lot of people are using 5-year-old systems that were never high-end when they were purchased. A firm I'm talking to right now last year purchased 10th gen Intel laptops even though 11th gen was out. Quadro T2000 video cards in their laptops, which are just nowhere near the performance they should have. So a lot of businesses are depending on other people to tell them what they need, and unfortunately the tools that gamers have, like NZXT having their tools on their webpage, or you know, 3D Mark, there's not exactly a tool like that for workstation applications. And you know, your Dell rep is probably not super knowledgeable on what they need, or maybe they're pushing something they have on promo, who knows. I can't speak to that end, but unfortunately a lot of businesses end up buying the wrong hardware and then they use it for 5 years, which makes it even worse over time. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. So again, the thumb screws are loose. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make sure the video card's level, but the other thing, you wanna make sure your video out isn't being blocked by the chassis. So you don't wanna try to level the video card and then all of a sudden now a DisplayPort can't be used. Gotta loosen this a little more. It is. so I'm just making sure everything's lined up and nice. Looks good. Another pet peeve I have, well, we all love back plates on video cards. I hate plastic ones, and some of the 3060 Ti's in this price range will have plastic back plates. Zotac was the only one in stock at the moment that had the metal one, and it was the right size. I knew I was going to have issues with this really thick. I think we had a total of 68mm thickness with the radiator and fan, so it was just a no-brainer to get the Zotac. And these 3060 Ti's are pretty easy to cable manage. There's just one harness we need to plug in. This is our VGA cable, our PCIe cable. Oh, this is a double one. Not gonna use that one, especially since we only have one. But even if there's two 8-pins, I'll route 2 cables rather than use one of those. So again, I'm just straightening out the wire, plug into the video card, and I'll just support it while I plug in the cable. And then it looks like my routing options are going to be the bottom grommet, okay, so I'll just throw like 2 zip ties on here to keep the wires together. So slide that one back. And let's add the other one. Actually, what I might even do, I think I might zip tie this one to the PSU shroud, just to keep it in place. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I don't do that all the time, but I'm gonna leverage this PSU shroud being just like in the perfect spot. Usually video cards are too far from it, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the holes in there and just put a zip tie. I'll do that. Actually, because of the way I have things, I'm gonna try to be a little more discreet with it. I'm tempted to do a black one, but I want the person to see there's a zip tie there in case they go to pull on the wire for whatever reason. They'll see, oh, there's a zip tie. Alright, and that's the nice thing about not having the power supply in yet. We'll cut that. You have to... Alright. If this was not a modular power supply, it'd be a little tricky to do this build. That's partly why I like modular, but the main reason I like modular is that if the power supply ever fails, I only use, really high quality power supplies, but if one fails, it's an easy swap. Just remove all the connectors from the power supply. You don't need to redo all the cable management. So we're looking great now. Now we're gonna just literally put the power supply in and we'll do an exhaust fan. If temps seem a little out of control, I might add a 140 up top. We'll see. These fans are just so awesome in the front. I think we're gonna be perfect. So now we'll get the power supply. The one thing I do want to be mindful of is the temperature on the drive. I know this drive isn't going to have any issues, but I'm going to put a sink on it. Complimentary, I didn't charge the customer at all for that. I just want to see the before and after with M.2 heatsink in this setup. Because it was basically mandatory on the last build I did. So now that the power supply's in, the order of operation for cables for me are the cables that are furthest back, the hardest to get to, they get plugged in first, and then the ones that are closer to me, which are usually the video card, those will go last. Before I do anything though, I'm gonna get a SATA cable plugged in. Sometimes I do that outside the case, sometimes I don't. Depending on how this cooler does. So Brian, if you're in chat, curious how this cooler is gonna do compared to the EK360mm. I'll probably have to buy a second one because this was pulled from my inventory. I was gonna use that as my test sample, but I'll just buy another one. I want to put them head to head against an i9 because hey, if I don't need a 360, great. It's just I've had some issues with the i9s. I've had some of them on 360mm hit 100C in the Meshify 2 compact, which blew me away. That's really what started me on this rabbit hole of buying the contact frames to replace the stock ILM. I looked into lapping, I lapped the CPU. While it helped, it wasn't like the answer. It's just, it's kind of, I think we're in the muscle car wars of CPU right now. We're in that muscle car era from like the 60s where gas mileage, like nobody cared. And just bigger engines, bigger the better. I think that's where we're at right now with computer hardware. We had a trend where things were getting more efficient, but then it's like we hit a wall and now it's like, who cares what kind of power it uses? We need increased TDPs to get the performance. So that's where we're at, and now we're dealing with temperatures. So we have 3 SATA harnesses. I think I'm just gonna put one in here, and we're gonna use that for the RGB. So let me reconfigure this. So things can work out nice. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the SATA cable into the power supply, but I'm not going to do anything with it outside of that for right now. And we'll go into the furthest connection. Let me just do this. This power supply is so short you could just rotate it. This may be the shortest power supply, ATX power supply out. I think it's 150mm in length. Maybe 140. Might be 140. So outside of that, we'll do, just put it back in there now. Let's do CPU. the CPU ones will be at the top row of connectors available to us. Let's see if you guys can see what I'm doing. It's a little dark. Normally I'll have a desk lamp on this side shining through the top of the PSU shroud, but for the stream, Alright, so we got the EPS switches plugged in. This is our SATA one I'm going to leave out. So ultimately I'll probably put it near the hard drive cage like so that if they add SSDs or whatnot, it'll be in that area, but we do need to connect it to the RGB SATA. Now let's see, what are we going to do with this video card? What our cables will look like when it's zip tied down. This will work out. Alright, so I'm not going to include the video card to the zip tie up here. We'll zip tie it to that harness just further down. Normally my builds have at least twice as much zip ties in this, which is kind of funny. So because we're going to be close to the glass, I'm not leaving the zip ties like this, pointing out. They're going to get tucked in just like that. But for now, since we're still working, we'll leave them the way you see them. And then we'll put this in for the, put this back in for that USB 3.0. See, I can't break my own rule, gotta do it by hand. This one being Velcro, I don't want to use a power tool on it anyways. So used to reaching for the power tool. Technically, I think it's supposed to go under this. Probably supposed to go like this. I'm guessing this is how it's supposed to go. I never use these Velcro straps. I think that's probably it. Alright, and then let's do our SATA. There's the SATA nicely tucked in there. Video card will come in right here. Video card, I'm just gonna zip tie it with the 24 pin and the EPS ones. I'm gonna leave out the other cables. Okay, just checking the cameras. And then we'll add a second one, a second zip tie down below. Now we'll plug the VGA cable in. This one only having a single video card cable. I think what I'm going to do is Normally I just put it in the box, but I'm gonna include it inside the chassis. So here's what we're gonna do. VGA 1. Do this one, and then the EVGA power supplies have Velcro that comes with them, so we're gonna use one of those to secure it to the hard drive cage. That's the only downside with modular power supply cables is you gotta make sure you remember where you put them. So this is now dummy proof. As long as it fits. Perfect. I always have extra cables for my clients, but you know, then we gotta wait for it to get shipped. We're almost done. We gotta bolt up the power supply and then tidy up the top ones. Got a rear fan to install. So I love using Noctua Redux fans. These T30s are probably going to replace at least all my radiator fans, but I mean, you know, there's not a 140mm version, so unless they release one, I'll still use the Reduxes for sure on the 140mm side. Making sure everything looks pretty. I love the way this is coming out. So we'll do the rear 140. Get some coffee here. You guys are ever in Vegas, Skimos in Henderson, Skimos. They make the best coffee, and one of their former baristas is actually a streamer. I forget the name. It's like Baby Jesus something or other. He's one of the few people I follow, so you could see him there. He does FPS, I think Call of Duty and stuff, but I don't see him at the coffee shop anymore because he's streaming full time now. And I built his workstation, which was kind of cool. Well, I guess it's technically a gaming system, but since he's making money off of it, it's a workstation. Alright, so where do we put this fan? There's no fan header around here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this fan in to the second CPU channel fan. So I'm going to just kind of see what's the nicest way to do that. I think we're going to go through the back side. I think this is what I did the last time I built in this. I'm gonna have to cut another zip tie. let me show you guys what I'm doing. So we need to come back in this way. Let me plug into that header. Kind of dark, and then I'm gonna get a light. It's just a tight fit. So let's see, how do I want to do this? I think we'll kind of zip tie it like that. Yeah, I'm really picky about my cables, so therefore I'm not the fastest builder, but I don't care about speed. I want everything to be nice and tidy. So let's see what makes the most sense. I mean, I would have preferred a fan header like every other motherboard where they have it in the vicinity of the video card, so I don't have to go through the back that way. But I think this is a best case scenario. That looks pretty cool. I wish I could say cable management would increase your performance, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Just makes things easier to work on in the future. So now what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna zip tie the cables together on the USB 3.0. Let's see, what are my options? There's a little metal tab there that I'm gonna bend out so the zip tie can grab it. Fractal uses, or Phanteks, they're so similar in name. They use that to secure a harness. So I'm gonna borrow that little tab. Try this a different way. So now that I have it already kind of looped around, I'm gonna put it into that metal tab I told you guys about. Oh, and it just slipped off. I might need to try again. Let's use a black zip tie because those are thinner. Let's cut that one off. Do the same thing. Seems to be working out well. And then I'll just do the same up top. one more of those. So I'm removing the harness that's in there. The wire that's in that spot I'm bending out of the way, I'm just including it on the zip tie. So you can see it's right here. It's right there. One day, when I'm rich and famous, I'll buy better cameras. So then you guys are stuck with these. If you stick around. Alright. So let's get everything secured up here. Now I'm just trying to snake through the zip tie. There we go. Got it. And we're gonna feed it into the tab. Alright, we're good. Any cuts I use? So that accomplished what I needed there. We're gonna zip tie these cables up top. Keep them organized. And then I gotta cut the original one so I could include another wire that wasn't there originally. Okay. Sweet. Let's see. Maybe we'll do one zip tie right here. Completely unnecessary, but it'll bug me if I don't. Right. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. Still need to tighten up that 140. It's just held in the pressure from the case. Everything's looking good otherwise, so we're just about done. Again, same thing. I don't tighten them all down until they're all started. This is something that's nice with cases that are open up top. So I'll miss that if I'm gonna do a build in the Focus 2. That's something I'll miss about it. Because I won't be able to reach in through the top. Put that right there. Do these manually. I'm just double checking my work here. So after I start stress testing, I'm gonna monitor the NVMe drive's temperatures, like, you know, even if it's like a video card benchmark. I'm gonna see how hot it gets. After a little bit, I'm gonna try an M.2 heatsink. It's a pretty tight fit, but I think we'll clear everything we need. And if it plays out working in the client's benefit, they'll get that for free. Well, yeah, we're looking good. Now we can just start putting panels back on. I'll shim the front panel and show you guys what I meant by that. So I'm always nervous about this because you definitely don't want to strip any of these. So you definitely don't want to over tighten. I think the washers that came with the cooler will work out just fine. Basically just put them in place like that. And I just drop this down slowly. And these should be the right length. Dip them in some thread lock. Just try it out. Add some more. These do feel a pinch short. Yeah, I'm gonna switch them out. I have some other ones. These should be the same thread. That is much better. Alright, cool. So we're not gonna use the ones that are included. I have some longer ones on my bench here. I use for motherboard standoffs. Those are perfect. They're biting. If I used the original ones that were there, this wouldn't have worked out well because the threads are too short. You would have just stripped it because it was screwing in, but it felt like it was only getting like maybe one turn worth of threads. Even though we're using a 1mm washer, it's actually probably lifting it up by maybe 2 or so because of the way this bracket is made with this radius. The washer is going right there. I'm not sure. It looks like more than 1mm worth of clearance though. And this will just help kind of, you know, with the new Evolv, Fractal kind of did this from the factory. They spaced it out further from the filter. Fractal Phanteks. Phanteks spaced it out from the factory further, so you don't really need to worry about this. But they don't have a newer MATX one that I'm aware of. And either way, this client would want their systems to match, so I think this might, man, I think they might have like 12 of my systems or so at this point, maybe more. I have to check. So I'm gonna put this panel on. Oh, let's get the filter on. Okay, the filter's in place. So now this is sitting a little further from the filter. It just gives a little more airflow potential. Now let's get the side panels on. I think for this moment I'm gonna leave the the mesh here in place. I'm not gonna take that off since we're not doing an intake or exhaust fan there. Let's see if it clears. Yep, looks like it cleared our harnesses that are up there. Alright, let's get that glass on. Alright, this was the difficult side. So the hinge is loose at the moment to allow me to, you know, wiggle it around a little bit. And you just gotta be careful until this is in all the way. You can't close it or this top panel will break the glass. Looks like we're good. Perfect. Now that it's shut, I'm gonna tighten the hinge again. Perfect. Real quick, what you'll end up seeing is that this panel is basically flush or maybe just a pinch above the glass, whereas before it's a little more closer to being that the glass sticks out a hair above it. So let's get that other glass panel in and then the system will be ready for stress testing. There she is. I will not be doing the peeling though because it's not mine, it's the customer's, but otherwise it's a nice looking build and I'm actually excited. I'll peel this off actually later, but I'm actually excited how this performs with that cooler setup from Phanteks. Their T30 fans are amazing. They're super quiet. They're the only fans that I know of that beat out the Noctua A12s. So otherwise, thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, see ya.